GDP of the BRIC countries is bigger than the United States,
Mm-hmm.
and they're taking over. And soon the dollar is not going to be the reserve currency, so they cannot print anymore what they want. Now, I have no idea how we're going to get out of that. We cannot get out of that anymore. And they just overdid it. I mean, I'm European. The Americans made so many rules that I had a friend who was born as a baby in the United States, and he moved to Holland when he was 2 years old, and he couldn't even open a bank account because of the rules that Obama did. So the rest of the world said, you know what, we're going to do our own stuff. You went too far, and they're going too far, and soon it's not the reserve currency, or it's already not connected to gold, not to the oil price, to nothing. It's a huge crisis.
Hey guys, welcome back to Capital Cosm. Today we've got Dr. Charles Nenner. He is former Goldman Sachs and a 25-plus year researcher in markets and cycles. Super excited to have him on. Charles, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
Before we get started, guys, I'd like to remind you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. 75% of you guys who watch this content are still not subscribed. If you don't mind hitting that subscribe button, it goes a long way. Let's go ahead and get started, Charles. This is your maiden voyage on Capital Cosm, so I'd like, you are a very acclaimed researcher, but introduce yourself to the audience who may be coming across your profile for the first time right now. Who is Charles Nenner?
Well, Charles Nenner is originally a medical doctor who did a couple of years of surgery, but that was too tiring because you don't get any sleep. And then I wanted to sit down, so I became a psychiatrist. And being a psychiatrist, we did research on if people become psychotic in certain periods all over the world. And indeed, they become psychotic all over the world in certain periods. That's already what you can call a cycle. And then on vacation, I was in New York, and I saw CNBC talking where markets go up, markets go down. It says, maybe it's the same work as what we did. And I started then, because there were no computers, we talk about the 80s. At least I didn't have a computer. I did everything by hand. I looked at the Wall Street Journal for the last 60 years. And indeed, I found the cycles. And the cycles are actually a reflection of mass psychology. And that I want to give an example. Let's say you and I own IBM, and we bought it at 100. It's 150 now. And IBM comes out with a great number. So now the question is, what does IBM do? And I still remember my father looking, how is it possible the stock goes down, then the numbers are so good? So the numbers are excellent. So if the cycle is up, then IBM goes up. And the Wall Street Journal will write, investors poured into IBM because they have great numbers. Now we have the problem if the numbers are still great, but now IBM goes down. So now the Wall Street Journal will say investors took profit because they don't think they do better next year, which comes to the conclusion that even if you know the facts, if you don't know the interpretation of the facts, it doesn't help you. So we don't deal that much with the facts. We deal with the interpretation of the facts because the facts by themselves are not important. Now, this is a very difficult thing to do because I was doing all the timing for the prop traders in Goldman Sachs, which means is we invested our own money and there was huge amount involved. So then you cannot buy and sell $50 billion in a whim because the number is good, the number is bad. So then you have to know in advance if the cycle is up, if the cycle is down, what's going to happen. The smaller traders still had a problem with that because they says, let's wait for the number. I says, when you wait for the number, you're too late. So even those people with PhDs from Harvard that sit over there had a problem understanding it's a total different way of approaching markets. Now, apart from cycles that tell us when things are going to happen, which date, I also developed a system, I call it the momentum system, that says if the stock goes up, we know in advance how high it's going. So now you know if you want to buy, just an example, IBM, which day to buy it and when to sell it when the cycle tops and the price target is reached. So it becomes a very sophisticated, what today you would call AI. I developed it in the 80s. I called it neural networks. But actually, it's more or less the same thing. Just the difference is AI, I think, if I understand well, can teach itself, and my system cannot teach itself.
Yeah. So with everything going on in the world right now, what's your kind of overview of the economy, like a very macro view? Where are we right now in the global economy in your mind?
Well, here you go again. It has nothing to do with what happens in the world.
Mm,
Understand? Things are going. If you look at an economy of 200 years of United States, it's like a big ship that almost doesn't go to the left or to the right. And it's nothing to do with the next number. Always one of the Fed says, let's wait for the next number, because those are very long-term cycles. And there's nothing you can do about it. Like, it just comes to my mind. Let's say you have children that want to buy a house. And they want to buy a house, and they want to buy a refrigerator, and they want to buy this and want to that. That's a cycle. That's not a cycle from, let's see how it goes tomorrow. That's a long-term cycle. So these cycles in the economy is very long. Now, we're really going down in this situation. In October, we should see that we're in a recession, and probably much worse than recession. And it's going to be big trouble. It's going to be I always say, if people can sleep after I finished, I hope they can sleep. The cycles that led to the 1929 crash are almost there.
I
So
see.
this is really, it's really try to save yourself, and don't look if you can make another 2, 3, 4% on the upside. Just watch, very carefully and try to be safe.
And what exactly are those cycles right now that are pointing to that crisis?
Well, what are those cycles? For instance, let me give you an example. You got war cycles.
Hmm.
So I was on a Fox channel and who knows where, saying in 2015, 60, we're going to have a lot of wars. How did I know that? Because in every second decade of a new century, there's a big war. So 2015, 100 years before, First World War. 100 years before, Napoleon. So if you Google it, you see every 100 years. Now, I won't understand it. Why? There used to be a theory that cycles are 60 years, the longest one, because people who went to a certain mess are dead, so the new generation doesn't know about it. But 100 years is too much. I really don't know how that works, but it's better that you know it. I mean, I remember people said to me, so if the cycles, you can't do anything about it. So after the winter comes the summer, comes the winter, comes the summer. What can you do? Well, if you know the winter comes, you're going to buy a coat at least. So you can do something, although you cannot do anything about changing the cycles. So these are very long-term cycles. These are long-term cycles in the deficit, in what the United States owns, what every American owns, how much interest they're accumulating, how much they're paying. And in 10, 50 years, 15 years, that the interest rates don't go down, and I don't think they go down substantially, they can almost not pay it. So these are very long-term situation. Now, this we have seen before. I'm from Holland, maybe you don't know. So the Dutch ruled once the world until they had the same problem. They overdid it. People aren't happy. You have to give them cheap money, like we give the student loan, whatever, and they went under. And then we had the Spanish, Portuguese, had the same problem. Then we had rules the world. And after that, we had the United States, and they make the same problem. People don't see that they're big problems, so they don't really look for good leadership. We give out too much money. We're busy with very small things. I'll give you an example. I look if my wife is not here, because she says always, why do you say that? If you look at the Roman literature, when Rome was burning, the senators for 3 weeks were discussing if angels were masculine or feminine. And Rome was burning down. So doesn't that remind you where we're going now?
Yeah,
So
very much.
it's very simple. It's very simple. We always repeat the same mistakes. So that's how cycle develop themselves. And you just have to know when the cycle tops and the whole thing comes tumbling down. Now, the whole thing will start tumbling down in September, October. And from then on, a major situation, because the cycles that led up to the 1929 crash are getting very close.
What's the underpinning behind these cycles? Why do they occur? I mean, you mentioned that it's not simply because older generations die and take those lessons with them. What else is the reason behind the recursive nature of these cycles?
To tell you honestly, it's very hard to explain. I would say let's say every 2-3 weeks, you personally might feel positive, and then a week not so positive. And if you will write it down, hey, every 3 weeks, every 3 weeks. So we neutralize each other. So we're a big group, and we create our own news and our own positivity or negativity, and it all goes in cycles. And it could be a cycle of 5 weeks, could be a cycle of 7 weeks. You just have to calculate when the investing public become negative again.
I see. So take us through the war cycle right now. You said we're heading into a war cycle, or we're at the, I don't know how you would describe it, a peak or
Well,
an
I did
intensifying
the
point.
research. I started my research in 3,000 years before in the Mandarin Empire. They have a lot of files over there. So then you have long-term cycles. Could be cycle of 1,000 years, could be cycle of 500 years, 100 years. And then in between, but you have the same thing in the Dow Jones or any asset, then you have in between smaller cycles. So if you have a big cycle that's up and a small cycle is down, then maybe it's not going to be very bad because it's a small cycle. But once the small cycle also bottoms together with all the other cycles, you're in big trouble. So in 2014 or so, the long-term cycle bottoms, and it's up for another 20, 30 years. In the meantime, in 2019, 2023, more cycles bottomed. So it's getting worse and worse and worse. So whatever you do, I remember, I remember Jackie Mason. Maybe you know him. He had this show. He talked about Reagan. Whatever happens, he left it away. Why? Because the cycle was with him. Whatever Carter did, the cycle was against him. Whatever he did, even when he tried to get the hostages out of Persia, there was a coalition of the helicopters. So if the cycles are against you, there's nothing you can do. And if the cycles are with you, you almost cannot do anything wrong.
Can you have multiple cycles kind of juxtaposed on top of each other? Like, can multiple cycles peak with each other? And is that happening right now?
We have an intraday service that we will maybe not believe it. By the way, it's research center. You sign up 30 days for free. You don't even have to give your credit card, so you can watch it yourself.
I'm sorry, Charles.
So service
Charles, you're cutting off. Can you go back to like 20 seconds?
If you go to Charles Nenner Research Center, you can sign up 30 days for free, even without a credit card. Doesn't cost. How we do it. So we have an intraday service that can tell you at 10 minutes past 9, the S&P is at this level. It goes up 16 points, and it will be there at 5 minutes to 4.
Okay.
So those are intraday cycles. Also work.
And what is do you put what's your view on the fourth turning cycle? I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with it, right? Neil Howe's work
with
the fourth turning. No?
Never heard of it. I don't know what it is.
Okay, it's a very similar precedent,
well,
but it's a very similar concept, right? He has an 80-year cycle. Yours is 100 years. His is 80 years. But it's based upon generations dying off and taking the lessons of that they learned with them. But regardless of that, are there any limitations behind cycle analysis that
well, I need about 10, 15. I need about 10, 15 data, which was a problem in the beginning with the Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is now the easiest one because Bitcoin is almost no fundamental appearance. I mean, like we talked, IBM can say something. Bitcoin has no news, so it's all emotional, so it's all cycles. So we make like 250% up, 250% down. It's the most simple, but it had to wait because there was not enough history to build the cycle.
Gotcha. And what about the commodity cycle? Are we where do you see us in the commodity cycle right now?
Well, the commodity at the bottom, which I write is going to surprise a lot of people, because then inflation will pick up. The first is for corn, wheat, we do live cattle. So you would say, how do you know what the weather is going to be? Now, I can't answer this one. The weather always comes afterwards, but we know where corn is going, where soybeans is going, based on the cycle. So there's a lot that I cannot really explain. This, you said 25 years. I do it for 45 years, 50 years, and I'm happy it works. But I don't really can go into the mysticism of it because I don't get it myself.
I see. Are you in the market for gold and silver? Then if so, please consider Miles Franklin. They are my gold and silver dealer of choice. So not only do they have super competitive prices that you're going to have a really hard time finding elsewhere, but then they also have top-notch customer support. I know Andy Schechtman, the owner of Miles Franklin, top-notch guy. I wouldn't be recommending them to you if I didn't have faith in their product. But what you really want to do, however, you want to email them at info@milesfranklin.com, and you want to say that Capital Cosmos sent me in the description line, because when you do that, you can get access to their special pricing sheet. You want to get that special pricing sheet because you're going to get special prices that you won't find on the website itself. So email them at info@milesfranklin.com. Tell them that Capital Cosmos sent you, and you won't be heckled with spam emails, etc. There's no commitment necessary. I promise you that. And with that said, I will let you get back to the video. And the oil cycle, how do you see that shaping up right now?
Yeah, the oil cycle is close to bottoming, but I don't see a real big up move. I don't have it ready, but if I remember well, I don't see a big up move for a while in the oil sector.
And is that because you're anticipating a severe recession coming down the pike?
Well, what I do is I don't make interpretation, because you can make the wrong interpretation.
Right.
I can say there's a recession, prices stay low, but then maybe they're going to close in Iran, who knows what, and then it goes through the roof. I don't deal with why. I only deal with what's going to happen.
Understood. How do you see
this? It's a total different approach.
Yeah.
You can hear day and night on television, like Buffett said, I never met a billionaire who's a financial journalist, but we still listen to them. And, if they're so good, they would make all the money, which they don't. So you got the Squawk Box in CNBC. If you go to my website, you see it was a lot on CNBC. I think they make a couple of $100,000, and they're sitting for the last 20, 25 years.
Yeah, it reminds me.
Getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and so why do we listen? Not that I've anything against them, but it's not going to make you money to listen to these people, because what happens is, let's say a market goes up. They don't talk to you when it's low. They talk to you when it's up, 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 and then it's almost at the top. So the insiders then say, hey, we got the public who is an idiot. Now let's sell to the public, because we're being helped by the media. Maybe you remember, no, you're still young. Maybe you remember there was a column on Wall Street that was called Hurt on the Street. And they canceled it because they found out that the people who wanted to sell something wrote it up.
I see.
The same people who wanted to sell it. So it was a whole crooked thing, but people still listen to it. So it's very difficult to listen. And my challenge always is, if you hear something in the media and they don't show you how they calculate it, don't believe them. Like, I feel there's 40% chance of a recession. Yes, maybe 37%, 38%. How did you calculate it? And if you look at my presentations, I show exactly how I calculate it. If you go to the website and you get the research, show exactly how I calculate it. The other people and it is under the situation that, well, nobody knows. So they don't challenge them, because actually nobody knows. You say it's 70% recession, the other one says 56% recession. You can say whatever you want.
It reminds me of a chapter in Nassim Taleb's Black Swan book, where he talks about people love to put stories and interpretations to facts and figures. So like whenever you log into CNBC, you see the gold price move up, I don't know, $10. They'll say something along the lines of gold moves as CPI data reveals lower than expected, blah, blah, blah. But it's just, there's really, there's no scientific backing behind it. It's just the price moved, and this also happened today. So therefore, it must be causation.
Right. And then as it happened. But
Yeah.
The problem with the Black Swan theory is that he writes at a certain moments there can be big crashes that nobody knows to anticipate. So everybody's busy trying to find out what could cause it. We don't do that. We just know when it happens.
Yeah.
We
By
don't care why it
definition, right?
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, you know how many people are busy at the big firms trying to figure out what can lead to it? Because they don't know how to calculate when it's going to happen. So it's a totally different approach. I don't care why. I want to know when it happens so my clients are safe. Like when the corona started, 6 weeks before we were in zero stocks, and we go down 40%. I had no clue why until it happened, but then it was too late. So I always urge people, don't deal with why it happens, just deal with when it happens. And if you don't know when it happens, then you should not be investing.
I see. What are your current views on the precious metals market right now?
The precious metal market, we're just selling out based on cycles. We did the whole, we had a very big up move on gold, I think $1,000 or so, and then cycle topped. And for a while, we don't think we go much higher.
And this kind of ties into what's going on with BRICS, what's going on here all over the world, really. I mean, you're seeing a global sovereign debt crisis. People often like to point to this $35 trillion of sovereign debt here in the United States. But
Right.
I mean, the rest of the world is also in pretty bad shape too. We just so happen to have the world reserve currency. My question to you is, we've got this 120% debt to GDP ratio. Of course, that can go up infinitely, provided that someone buys the new debt to finance the old debt. But how do you see this playing out? People have been calling in a sovereign debt crisis for 10, 15 years now. But the can's been kicked down the road for so long. How do you see the sovereign debt bubble playing out?
The GDP of the BRIC countries is bigger than the United States,
Mm-hmm.
and they're taking over. And soon the dollar is not going to be the reserve currency, so they cannot print anymore what they want. Now, I have no idea how we're going to get out of that. We cannot get out of that anymore. And they just overdid it. I mean, I'm European. The Americans made so many rules that I had a friend who was born as a baby in the United States, and he moved to Holland when he was 2 years old. And he couldn't even open a bank account because of the rules that Obama did. So the rest of the world said, you know what, we're going to do our own stuff. You went too far, and they're going too far. And soon there's not the reserve currency, or it's already not connected to gold, not to the oil price, to nothing. It's a huge crisis. But nobody talks about it. And then the United States continues to force the world what they have to do. And they're taking more distance all the time.
Right. And I mean, we see how all these markets are playing out, the economy playing out, but is it, and you also alluded to the fact that we're starting to see this cultural decay, much akin to how they were debating back in, what was it, Rome, you said, where they're debating something about
if the angels were feminine or masculine.
Feminine or masculine. Yeah. I mean, these sort of, pointless discussions when times are so, when you have times of abundance like we had for the last 20, 30 years, this is the kind of stuff that agree, especially when you have 0% interest rate, right? So is culture downstream or upstream of?
No, there's a 60-year cycle. I also wrote about that.
Okay.
And we have the 60s back. 60s is now. And it's not over for a while. And I think it can get much worse because we got the internet and we got all the TikToks and whatever. So if you want to protest something, you can get 1 million people, just giving a TikTok. There is this cycle of great unease. And I personally think that we're going to be in a big war. I mean, I hear if I may say, stupid remarks from politicians. We survived a nuclear North Korea. Well, North Korea doesn't want to die. You don't survive a nuclear Iran because they're going to be martyrs. They're going to die. And I never see anybody approach that problem. I mean, they're almost ready one of these days to just say, if you don't know what we say, we send over the nuclear bombs. And then United States says, well, we're not going to be the first one. and we have to talk to the Congress. And before you know it, it's much too late. They have no idea what's going on. No idea what's going on. And if you listen to Kamala Harris, I don't even know what nobody knows what she's saying. And I'm just flabbergasted. I've never seen a country being destroyed this fast.
So do you think it'll be a domino effect once one theater of war pops open? You do have the Eastern European theater of war between Russia and Ukraine. You have the Middle Eastern theater of war between Iran and Israel. You have a potential one between Taiwan and China, and potentially
Right.
North Korea and South Korea. If one really goes kinetic, does that will all hell break loose after that point? Hey, Charles. Hey, Charles.
And what is it again? Yes.
Hey, sorry, you broke up for like 10 seconds before the end of the question.
I said, first I said the American fleet cannot be everywhere. And second of all, what does it mean Ukraine is going to win a war against Russia? Nobody, Napoleon, Hitler, nobody wins against Russia. So I don't even, it's a joke. What happens is that I think there's agreement with a lot of companies in the United States that we give billions of dollars after the war and you get all the contracts and you make a lot of money because we built up Ukraine. I personally, I know a little bit of history, so I asked people, so Kennedy was wrong because he said to Khrushchev, you cannot have rockets on Cuba, they're too close. Because if you say Ukraine can have them 100 miles from Russian border, so then he was wrong, Kennedy. And then there were all kinds of agreements, which I know because I am European under history, that there was agreement that they're not going to expand NATO, and they do it anyway. And then Putin says, up to here, I don't want you to come too close. And if Ukraine would only say, we're going to be not in the NATO, whole thing would be over. But it's all kinds of forces outside the Ukraine that force them to continue. There is no, so in Holland, I hear there are a lot of fugitives from Ukraine, men who don't want to fight, but they cannot get asylum because Ukraine says you have to come and fight over here, otherwise your passport is illegal. So then Putin, Russia said, we give you a Russian passport, come over here. Because you don't hear that, how many Ukraine men are dying. There's almost no generation of men left over there.
Mm.
It is a terrible situation. And it could stop tomorrow. And with that, I agree. Trump says I could stop it in one day. And I think he could stop it in one day because he doesn't want it to continue. But this administration wants it to continue. They have this thesis that we have to bring Russia to its knees. Nobody could ever bring Russia to its knees, but that's what they think.
Aren't all of these potential wars, bullish for oil and commodities though? Shouldn't I don't know, your analysis, shouldn't the analysis tell us that we should be more bullish on the oil and commodity side though, if that's all the case?
It's not so simple because I remember the crash. I had a firm in the World Trade Center. I remember the crash of 87 and all the commodities came down. What happens is if the market crashes and people want their money and the commodities are still holding up, then the fund is going to sell the commodities in order to pay you out. So there are all kinds of technical reasons why commodities can go down when you think they should go up. Of course, the cycles predict that. So it's not that simple.
Gotcha. Well, I've been asking this question to all my guests. Are there any books you'd recommend the audience look into to become a better investor, to become a better analyst, etc.?
No, because the less you study, it's like playing tennis. If you know a little bit to play tennis and you get a good teacher, you first have to learn not to play like you did before. The best thing is not to know anything. Just watch for 30 days how we do it. You don't have to subscribe, but at least understand how it's being done. If you like it, you can subscribe. But first, don't accept all the nonsense you hear. First, look how because we work with all the big firms, don't you want to know what all the big firms do? Of course you want to know what the big firms do. if I would still be at Goldman Sachs and you would say, can you give me a tip? I said, yeah, we decided to do ABC. You would ask me, can I know? The fact that I'm not anymore is not enough for one reason or the other. The same thing when I was a doctor. When I had a white coat, everybody listened. When I was sitting with my family, had no white coat, the aunts and the uncles knew more than I did. They didn't listen. So that's the situation. So don't look how we do it. It's not in a book. And don't read any books because you will never understand financial markets.
Okay. Well, we've covered a whole host of topics here, Charles. Anything else you want to talk about before we close things out?
No, I think we made a lot of mess for the people. I hope they can sleep tonight. These are very serious times.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to understand that, I just tell you, in 1927, 28, the professionals, JP Morgan says we have been in a plateau. Stocks will never go down again. So when it looks they're not going to go down again, everybody bought already. The slightest things that happens, the whole thing crashes. And we were just waiting for the cycle to top. And then it's not that there has to be a new item in the news. It's just that people will look at it differently and suddenly they wake up, oh, there's a problem which existed already 6 months before, but then the cycle was up. So they didn't take care of it. But when the cycle turns down, suddenly say, oh, this can go wrong, this can go wrong, this can go wrong. And then it goes so fast because the insiders are already mostly out of the market. It's the weak individual investor who is holding the market up.
Gotcha. Well, where can people find you, Charles?
I think it's Charles Nenner Research Center. I think it's called. Oh, sorry. My wife says charlesnenner.com.
We'll have all those links down below, guys. So be sure to check them out. If you enjoyed this show, right, go Charles, go in the comment section. Also, let me know if you agree or disagree with any of our takes here. Really interested to get your thoughts here, guys. What were you going to say, Charles?
No, I'm interested. Some feedback.
Yeah, give us some feedback down below. Check out the links in the description box. And also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so we can keep getting more guests and growing this channel. It is free, but it does go a long way, too. It's a little bit that we can, a little bit goes a long way here. So we appreciate your time. Thank you for watching. Until next time, guys.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.